So I thought I'd do something different today. Today I am going to go over some of my data from my last 200 run sprint, in which I did a rotating random configuration, and I did not allow myself to reset at all. So that's no undo button, no reset combat, no quit outs, nothing. Everything I played was final. Every decision I made, I can't undo. I did this for a couple reasons. One, to kind of just to see what it would look like. You know, when I was doing my regular Titan clears, I was generally winning like every run. I had a 25 win streak without really trying for win streak at that point, and just kind of trying to clear the Titans. And then lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I had a 25 win streak, but I allowed myself to reset, and I just wanted to see what it would look like if I didn't let myself reset, if I could improve this way, or just to challenge myself and to see what my win rate would look like. Another reason why I did it is because I am obviously, as you might be able to tell by this video if you watch it, I am pretty interested in the stat collection of these things. I don't know why, I just like looking at these figures, these stats, like looking at various win rates of different things and all that, and it's pretty hard to get a clear picture of what is, winning a lot or losing a lot when basically everything has like a 90-95% win rate. That's not very fun, and it's not very meaningful. So, kind of not allowing the resets and setting that hard rule caused me to lose way more, I'll tell you that now. I definitely lost a lot more runs, and I don't know if that's because I play too hasty, or it's just not clear at all times what you're actually supposed to do without, I don't want to say prior knowledge, because when I do reset in this game, I don't reset looking to kind of manipulate the RNG or kind of approach the combats knowing what I'm going to draw. I only really reset when I misclick, make some kind of normal error, or I set up my deployment wrong or something like that. So I wanted to see what this exercise could kind of show. So the way I did it, I should go in and show what I did. So basically what I would do is I would start with Fell, and then I would rotate down. So I would start with Fell, I'd do a random Allied Clan and a random Pyre Heart, and then I would go down to Hellhorned Prince. And then up here, back to Pyreborn, to Phoenix, Sentient, and then Eka, go like this, zigzag, up until I got to Rector, and then I would go back to Banished and play Talos, and then do the same thing, Queen, and then go like this. So that's every champion. That is 20 different champions, and I played 200 runs, so basically I played all 20 champions 10 times each, with random Allied Clan and random Pyre Heart, and did not allow myself to reset. So now we have some background. Without further ado, let's see what it looks like. So, first up we have my Pyre Heart stats. This is pretty interesting here. We have Proto Heart Cage bringing up the rear here with a 26.67% win rate. Heart of the Pact, we have 36%. Life Mother's Pyre, 61%. Malika's Pyre, 47%. Winged Spirit, 50%, as is Fyra's Greed. Aquas Reservation, 47. Bogworm's Growth, 62.5. Echo the Time Father, 57. Herzl's Horde, 58. Savagery, 38. Dominion 72, and entropy about 47. So as you can see, there's a bit of a spread. I will say too, I understand that it's still not a huge sample size, but I think it's quite a lot. 200 runs. I think that this is all these individual Pyre hearts. A lot of them don't have like a huge sample, so I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot to glean from the Pyre hearts, but there are some interesting things that pop up here. And by the way, as you can see, my overall win rate in these 200 runs was 102 to 98. So I won 51%, just over 50% of the time. So first thing that's interesting to me, let's start with Proto Hard Cage. My worst Pyre. And I almost kind of don't really want to even chalk this up to variance, because I was also tracking my stats for about the last 100 of my 180 Titan clears, and I did go over that in another video, but just as a refresher here, Proto Hard Cage, even when I allowed myself to reset, didn't perform well there either. That is quite surprising to me, because I thought before my Titan clears and before this exercise, that I thought that this would be a pretty good Pyre heart. And it seems like I have enough of a sample to kind of determine that this Pyre heart seems to perform really badly for me. I thought that just having good stats and no effect is a good thing, but apparently not. Apparently the lack of effect really kind of hurts. I don't really, when I have Proto Hard Cage, I don't really particularly notice anything bad about it while I'm playing it. Like, it doesn't really feel bad to have. It's just that it kind of doesn't do anything, and it doesn't really help you when you're in a bad situation. I don't know. I don't know why, but it seems like it shouldn't matter that much that it doesn't have an effect, because the stats are so good, but I don't know. It was my worst performing Pyre. And it has been pretty consistently. So that is something that's very interesting to me. Next up, we have Heart of the Pact. Heart of the Pact, same thing, another very low win rate. I think my second lowest, and that one doesn't surprise me. I do think Heart of the Pact is a pretty bad Pyre. It has pretty poor stats for an effect that isn't really that great, and in my opinion, gets worse as the run goes on. It's kind of a catch-22, because if you play two of your different clan cards and then you draw a card, well, that's great. It's easy to proc in the early game, but the problem is drawing a card isn't really that strong in the early game because your deck isn't very good. Once you start to refine your deck in the late game, then drawing a card would matter more. Only problem is that now in the late game, you're generally not really playing two different clan cards on the same turn that often. Sometimes you are, but it happens less and less as your deck gets more refined. You tend to lean one way or the other into one of your clans. Not to mention, of course, the horrible stats on this thing. I mean, the health is just so low. It's the maximum health on it is barely enough that you even need to get through the Titans. So not too surprising there for me that one didn't perform very well. Next, we have the Life Mother's Pyre. I went 8-5. I think this Pyre is pretty good. It is not very good in the early game. It's not going to save you from a bad start at all. And that's generally what most of the losses were there. Just not doing anything immediately. And for the most part, it's interesting because, well, my win rate was pretty high. I think we can't ignore the effective variance here. They still aren't huge sample sizes. The thing about Life Mother's Pyre is there's no real reason why it should have performed super well, because I think only for a couple of my runs did I even use the effect at all. I actually have a good amount of Life Mother's Pyre runs where I literally just didn't actually spend any money to duplicate anything more than maybe once. A lot of the time you just don't really get anything good enough to dupe a bunch, especially early on in a run. That's why I think, this Pyre isn't really going to save you from a bad start at all, and it's just going to help solidify your win. It's just kind of a nice-ish effect, but it's nothing crazy. So, yeah, I performed well on it in either case, but I don't think it's that great. Next up, we have Malika's Shifting Pyre. So, 8 and 9. Its low health pool was definitely felt for me. It also has very low stats to start with. Again, it's not going to save you from a bad start. I do think this Pyre is good, though. Something that I have to kind of mention is that during this initial start, I'd say like my first 50-ish runs was during like 4th of July time. And I was kind of just like playing on my Steam Deck in like the car and like at, not at home. I was kind of out and like winding down at night just playing Monster Train. And I did really poorly in those runs. My win rate in like my first 50 runs started at like 50%. Or sorry, not 50%. I ended at 50%. Started around like 40%. I pretty much had to like claw my way back up to 50%. But I started around 40% my first 50 runs. And anyway, the reason why I'm talking about this now is because I got a lot of Malikas during that time. Like, it kept giving me Malikas, and I was just doing really well. Badly, I mean. So I think this is kind of unfair to Malikas. I think that a lot of these losses are from that short stretch. So I do think that this Pyre is better than the numbers suggest. But I don't love it just because it's not it's not going to save you from a bad start. All the Pyres we've talked about so far, I don't love. And then we have Wing Spirit. 10 and 10, 50% win rate. I personally think that Wing Spirit, and this is probably a bit of a hot take, I think it's like fine. I hear people talk about this Pyre a lot as if it's terrible, it's the worst Pyre in the game, and I just don't think I can get there. I really don't think it's the worst Pyre in the game at all. Like, yeah, its stats aren't that great. It has decent-ish attack at the early game, and it only ends with 100 HP, but I think the fact that you can full heal your units is so valuable in the early game. Like, it basically just guarantees you're probably not really going to leak the boss in the first 2 rings. Like, that is so huge. Even if you, like, and I'm not even going to say even if, because I think like 90% of my Wing Spirit runs, I pretty much don't touch the effect after like ring 2. It just doesn't do anything. But that's enough. Like, it already did its job in getting me through the first 2 rings. And there even are some runs where it actually is extremely critical that I use it later on. And it actually is really important. Those are more rare. But the fact that it even does anything in the first 2 rings, what it does is so valuable that I can't say it's a bad Pyre. I think it really shores up weak early games. And it can be bad for that reason. The ceiling is not there at all, yeah. But it's not bad. Then we have Fire's Greed. 6 and 6, 50% win rate. Again, it's a good Pyre. I think that this one, it didn't give me a lot of Fire's Greed. I got pretty low runs here. Well, I guess not that low compared to some of the other ones, but I think this Pyre, again, same thing. It's a little bit better than the stats are giving it credit for. Like Malika's, I don't know if I got it a lot during that period too, but I think this is a good Pyre. I don't think there's really a whole lot to say. It's got a lot of health. It's got a decent attack. Gives you a lot of money. I think it's good. It's again not going to save you on ring 1, but yeah, I don't think much to say there. Aquas Reservation, 7 and 8. I think this Pyre is like meh. Has alright stats. His effect is like okay. It's like pretty good sometimes. It's just like a totally fine Pyre again. Aquas Reservation. It's fine. Lets you play Calcified Embers for free. Lets you get big turns in. Has fine stats. Not my favorite. Not the worst either. Bogworm's Growth. Very few runs on Bogworm's Growth, but I did pretty well on it. 5 and 3. And I do have a lot more runs from my original Titan clears. Where do I? And I went 8 and 1 on it. That was with resets, of course, but it's a sort of similar thing. This Pyre just continues to kind of perform well for me. even though in theory I don't think it's very good, because it has extremely low base attack. I think it has the lowest base attack in the game at 30. I think maybe only Pyre Dominion has the same base attack. It's very low base attack. If you leak the boss, you're really in trouble. The space it gives you is totally random, which floor it goes to. Yeah, the stats aren't great, like I said, but for whatever reason, it just keeps performing super well for me. So I do think I understand maybe why the stats are so low, because it's one of those ones where the effect might be a lot better than you kind of realize. But I don't know. It just doesn't really... I don't love seeing it at all, but it just continues to do well for me. Echo of the Time Father, 8 and 6 on this one. I do think of all the active pyres between Winged Spirit, Quas Reservation, and Echo of the Time Father, I do think Echo of the Time Father is the best one. It's also the most fun to play with, probably. I still don't think it's amazing, though. It has okay-ish stats, a good effect that can be really useful. It can also be completely useless, and I just don't use it at all during a run, really. There's plenty of runs where it just doesn't do anything. But it's probably the best of all the active pyres. Herzl's Horde. Got a good amount of this one. Did pretty well on it. It's just a nice one to have. Just a bunch of deployment ember, sure. Yeah, I can't complain. Stats are fine. That ember's not doing anything for you in the early game, like I said. So it's kind of continuing that theme of not really saving you, but it's a very good little effect. I think it's one of the better pyres in the game. Pyre of Savagery, pretty bad, 5 and 8. Don't know the explanation of this one, because I do think it's a good pyre. But I noticed in a lot of my losses, I definitely felt the really low health. The low health really hurts when you don't have great backline access. And when you don't have, like, I gotta say, I remember I kept getting this pyre when I had, like, Under Legion and Umbra, where it just, like, doesn't really do anything for you. And, you know, with Under Legion can kind of leak a lot. So both of those clans, like, really poor synergy with this pyre. There's also a couple of runs where, like, I just screwed up, and this pyre gives you a very low margin for error. Like, there's a few runs in there where, like, I had a pretty easy path to victory, but I just screwed something up. I just played some fight wrong or something, and I got punished for it. I do think it's a great pyre. These stats are not telling the full story here, I think. This is a skill issue for me, I think, and also just getting it in bad combos that it doesn't really do anything in. Next up, we have Pyre Dominion, 18 and 7, 72% win rate. By far my best performing pyre. Also by far my most common pyre. I don't know. It just... So 25 total runs out of 200. So 1 out of 8 runs I got Pyre of Dominion. It just kept giving me Pyre of Dominion. I don't know why. I wasn't going to complain about it. I think it's a very fun pyre to use. And it's, I think, pretty clearly the best. I think even the fact that I had 7 losses is, like, pretty bad. I honestly, like, should have won way more of those runs. And again, just stupid mistakes were keeping me from winning those. It's just, even with the poor stats, it's just pretty much guarantees your early game. It guarantees a thin deck. It's even on something like Baron Grail, where it's like, oh no, I lose my assistance, but it's like, but now I have Pyre of Dominion. Like, I have a really thin deck and I have a bunch of units. Like, who cares? Like, it's still just so good. You know, like, I don't think I really need to talk too much about Pyre of Dominion. I think it's pretty clear how good it is. That's in contrast to Pyre of Entropy, 7 and 8. I, for whatever reason, this is another pyre I kept getting with Under Legion. Not that that's relevant in any way, I'm just mentioning it. I hate playing with this pyre. It doesn't perform that badly for me, but when it does perform badly to me, it's not like... Basically, it's like... a lot of my losses are just due to skill issues for me, just me making stupid mistakes. And I'm not saying that the Pyre of Entropy losses are any different in that regard, but to me, the Pyre of Entropy just creates more feels bad situations that feel hard to avoid, where you just draw like 7 blights, and it's just like, you're kidding me. Like, I need to play cards. I need to draw my cards. You know, there's no point in having a thin deck, because now you're just gonna draw a bunch of blights. So now I have to add a bunch of garbage to my deck, and it's like, oh boy, well now instead of drawing blights, I'm drawing garbage. So that doesn't help me either. And I don't know, I really hate this Pyre. It's the least fun Pyre in the game, in my opinion. Really hate using it. It feels terrible. I don't like it. It performed fine, but I do think it's bad, and I don't like playing with it. So those are just my quick thoughts about all the Pyres. I think the Pyre stats here are not super enlightening. Again, I don't think that a lot of them have huge sample size. I think I don't agree with some of them, if that makes any sense. I know whether the numbers, you can't really disagree, but I don't think they're super indicative of the power level of some of these Pyres. We're going to get into the champions and stuff next. I kind of forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, I did want to mention it. Maybe I'll make a clickbait statement about it in the title or something, but there is one key figure at the end that I think really is very interesting in this data. Something that came to light that kind of jumped off the page that I didn't really totally realize, but is too pronounced of an effect to deny. So stay tuned to the end to see what that relevant piece of information is. But anyway, let's move on to the champions. Okay. Fel 7-3, 70%. Talos 6-4. Phoenix 3-7. Gilda 8-2. Eka 5-5. Arjun 4-6. Bully 7-3. Madame Lion's Mane 8-2. Ureki 5-5. Baron Grail 9-1. Hornbreaker Prince 3-7. Shards Queen 1-9. Sentient 7-3. Wildington 2-8. Tethys 6-4. Soulguard 3-7. Penumbra 6-4. Primordium 5-5. Rector 4-6. And Little Fade 3-7. Okay. So there was no champion that I went undefeated on, and there was no champion that I went winless on, although there were a couple that were close in both of those regards. So starting with the banished champions, I think that they're both quite good. I think both these champions are good. Talos is a little bit harder to play. I'm still kind of, I feel like, learning what I can and can't get away with on Talos. Not to kind of skip over Fel, but I feel like Fel's pretty straightforward, right? I'll probably do a tier list for champion paths at some point, but Fel's good. Fel's just a good champion. Skill issues on my part. To lose those 3 runs, I had winning lines, and I guess I should have mentioned this too at the beginning of the video. In the majority of these runs, I just lose them due to a mistake on my part in the combats. In the vast majority of these runs, I'm putting together winning lines, like I'm seeing the lines to win, but the execution is bad, and that's, all those Fel runs are like, yeah, all of them had winning lines. I just did something stupid. Talos is a little trickier, where I feel like I created some unwinnable situations for myself, particularly from not totally understanding what I can get away with in the early game. And that particularly was a problem with the melee weakness path. The melee weakness path I always kind of feel like is stronger in the early game than it actually is. Celebrate, I feel like I've gotten a pretty good handle on. I feel like I kind of, because I played so much, because it's the most fun one, and I think it is pretty good in general. Celebrate, most of these runs were honestly Celebrate. I really try to justify taking Celebrate if I can, just because it's my favorite one to use, and I think that it's good. Although the melee weakness one in general might kind of be better if you can get away with it. It's just crazy damage. Crazy, out of control, insane ceiling on melee weakness Talos. But shaky early game. And the same is true for Celebrate Talos, to be honest. But I think I've kind of got a handle on Celebrate Talos. The melee weakness one is the one that gave me trouble, where I don't think it's bad. I think it's just, hard to pilot in the early game and hard to just kind of get a feel for what you can get away with. How greedy you can be, how you need to play the fights out is hard to kind of learn. So moving on now to Pyreborn champions, these two couldn't be more different in my eyes. I think Phoenix is bad, and I think Gilda's great. That's reflected in the data. The data here, to me, I think all these champion datas, or datum, it's just data, right? Data. All this champion data, to me, is a lot more accurate to what I actually think than the Pyre data. And this Pyreborn champions are no exception. I really don't like Phoenix. I think that he's like I'm starting to almost kind of think of him as Golden Crown or bust. Like, if I don't see Golden Crown, I kind of look around and see if I can maybe justify the Overlord Slay path. And be like, okay, maybe I can do this. But then, like, I would say 2/3 of runs that I take Overlord Phoenix, I just end up dumping him at some point. He just ends up being a throwaway because I just find something better. Like, he's so sad compared to Hothead. I know it's hard to compare things to Hothead, but, like, my God, he's just so sad compared to Hothead. He's just such a terrible... He's Hothead at home. Like, he is just... Oh, man, he stinks. It feels really bad to use Overlord Phoenix. It's one of the only perma-scaling paths that manages to not really be very fun, in my opinion. And that's my opinion. Maybe you disagree. But he's not fun. He's really awkward to use. Not only do you need Mind Cage, you also need like a Tome of Contracts on top of that, or you need 2 Tome of Contracts. And then you have to scale him up, and then you have to find a way to keep him alive. You can't put any upgrades on him. He just needs so much work to just be like good. He's good when you get him to work, but he just needs so much to get off the ground. And you're really not guaranteed to see any of it. And then there's the Pyrogel path, which I just have not had any luck with. I think there's only one Pyrogel run in here, and it was pretty much dead in the water pretty early on. So I tend to just take Golden Crown because eggs. I mean, free eggs, sure. My champion is at least guaranteed to produce some kind of value, which is never really what you want from a champion. Their best path is one that's like, well, at least it does something. Yeah. In general, I really like Pyreborn, I especially Lady Gilda. But Phoenix is just not... I don't like Phoenix. I think he's really weak. Lady Gilda is not, on the other hand. I'll leave in a little spoiler treat here for when I do my champion path tier list, but I'm pretty convinced that Guildmother Lady Gilda is the single best champion path in the entire game. Maybe a hot take, but I just think it's doing so much, offering so much value, securing your early game, just insanely strong. And then you also were guaranteed to see, if you don't see Guildmother, you're at least going to see the Avarice path, which is not nearly as good. It has a weaker early game, and a weaker late game, and weaker everything, but it can at least be fine. There is a bit of a science to playing it. You do have to kind of chump block with whelps to kind of keep her at full HP to get through Ring 1 a lot of the time, instead of using those whelps to like farm Avarice or farm gold with your Avarice. You kind of have to be like really conservative. And then her payoff is like good, but not really amazing. Like, she gets like a couple hundred attack maybe if you have a lot of gold, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like a one big hit champion path that isn't really hitting that much, but she's just a big stat stick. She's like fine. She generates money with the Avarice path. It's fine. And then on the other side of the coin, there is also Bloat Matron, which I think is probably the worst champion path in the game. Don't like that one at all. So yeah, I mean, Phoenix and Gilda, Pyreborn in general, I really like. Phoenix, I do not. Next up, we have Ekka and Arjun. Ekka 5 and 5, Arjun 4 and 6. Both of these champions performed meh. Ekka did a little bit better than maybe I would have expected, but all the runs that I lost with Ekka were just felt so bad. Like, they were all just like, I don't even know if I allowed myself to reset these if I would have won this. Like, this is just terrible. I mean, some of these were just dead in the water in ring 1 or 2. She's so fragile. And then it's like, I hear a lot of people talking about Eka, and it's like, oh, you just take the incant path, and if you can get through the early game, she gets really strong after, the early game. And I'm like, I don't even think that's true. I think she still sucks even in the mid game. Like, it's only really later on that she really starts to shine. She really only pops off in the late game. I think there are plenty of runs in there where even in the mid game, I was just still super shaky and just really weak. Like, it's still just not that good, even in the mid game, in my opinion. She's a champion that I don't really love playing. I think shouldn't be too spaced because she's not doing enough. Her stats are way too low to justify that. Her weird full moon path, I think, is terrible, and it's honestly kind of poorly conceived. I hate to talk badly about it, but it's like, I think it's one of the only real design fails of any champion in this game. Like, the whole champion in general, Eka, is like, it's almost like a just start over sort of thing. Like, just back to the drawing board on this champion. I really hate to talk about it like that, but I really think there's so many problems with this champion that, the incant one can be fun. The Lunar Steward one can work. It's just, I literally just finished a Lunar Steward run. Detail here that I'll get into later, but I started doing reset runs again after the sprint was over. I just started getting through a couple runs. I'm doing rotating random again. I just did Eka. I just did a Lunar Steward run. That went really well, but a lot of the time you have no idea if you're going to see that moon cycle. A lot of the time you just kind of have to take Lunar Steward to just get through the early game, even if you have no moon cycle, because at least it just gives you some amount of stats, and then you just don't see any moon cycle, and now you have a useless champion. That's always fun. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Eka, and I'm saying this, by the way, when I technically had a higher win rate on her than Ardoon, who I think is a really well-designed champion. I don't know with Ardoon. I want to say skill issue on my part. I just played bad in these runs, probably. I think he's definitely much better than Eka. I don't think he's great, but at least he has like 3 decent paths. I think he's a champion that really encourages multi-pathing, and he's pretty good. He's not that strong, but he's pretty good. So I think he underperformed here. That's my bad. Next we have Under Legion, Bolit and Madame Lion's Mane. Both of them did quite well, which in Bolit's case does actually surprise me. In Madame Lion's Mane case, it does not surprise me. Bolit having 7-3 surprises me because I don't think he's very good. And I think in those losses, it felt terrible. Like, he just felt so bad in all those losses. And I think even some of those losses were with the rally path. I think everyone is kind of on board with, oh, Bolit sucks if you don't see the rally path. And it's like, well, I think even with the rally path, he's kind of bad a lot of the time. I think that he can pop off, he can go crazy. But there's certain times where you just don't really get a whole lot of support for him, and he just kind of ends as like a 250 attack guy, and it's like, okay, you don't see the trample path maybe, and it's just like you just have this 250 attack 3 space guy, and it's like, yeah, that's not doing that much for me. This champion, I think, just too often becomes a throwaway. That didn't end up happening for me in a lot of these runs, but yeah, I did do well on him. I think, and I guess we'll get into it when we do the clan win rates, but I think my opinion of Under Legion improved after this exercise. I was overall, I don't want to say an Under Legion hater, but I think I was maybe a little bit lower on Under Legion than a lot of other people were. But after this exercise, I think I'm starting to see the light a little bit. Madame Lion's Mane, though, even if you want to call me an Under Legion hater, I was always a fan of Madame Lion's Mane. Always a good champion. 3 decent paths, although I think that the Incant and the Man-Eater are pretty clearly the best ones. I mean, there's not really any reason to take the decay one, in my opinion. I just don't think there's really any reason to ever take it. You're guaranteed to see at least one of the other ones, so you just take one of the other ones, and it's great. And she's awesome, incredibly strong champion. I think you either want to go Man-Eater 3, or you want to go Incant 1 plus Man-Eater 2 for that mute. That's the ideal version of her. You can also go fully into the Incant / Etch thing. You won't always get support for that, though, is the problem. But that's also very good. And she's also a very fun champion to play. So I enjoyed playing my Ender Legion champions here. And next we have the Lazarus League champions. 5-5 on Areki and 9-1 on Baron Grail. So Areki being at 5-5 really surprised me, because I think I lost several runs to the Titans where I was kind of shocked that my strategy just didn't really get there. Like, it just wasn't strong enough, which kind of surprised me. I think that Areki is definitely better than what you're seeing here, and you'll see this just as a sneak peek later. Areki was really the only thing kind of lowering my win rate on Lazarus, which is crazy because he starts with Mix. He starts with Secret Ingredient, which is, I think, by far and away the best starter card in the game. So this underperformance here, and you'll see that later, by the way, with the Secret Ingredient. Trust me, you'll see that in the Secret Ingredient stats. Areki being at 5-5 really surprised me. I don't know, because I think he's good. I don't think he's like a great, amazing champion. I think he's just a champion that has like 3 solid-ish paths, like 3 like pretty decent paths. All of them are fine. I'm kind of a partial to the Reanimator or the Incant one. Probably the Reanimator most of the time, I think, is usually his best path. But I like the Incant one. My only problem with the Incant one is that it's pretty bad in the late game. Like the Titans, especially, the way that the unstable works is like really frustrating. It will only pop the Titans once 2 of the other ones are at 1 HP. So I actually frustratingly had, I think even 2 of my losses were frustratingly ones where the Titans were just like, both Entropy and Savagery were sitting at like, I don't know, like 200 HP each, and they both had like 500 unstable on them, but they wouldn't die because they were both both of them were not at 1 HP. Dominion was sitting at top at 1 HP, and I just died because I'm just, waiting for these 2 to pop, and they don't. And it's annoying how that works. And it's the reason why I kind of don't love the Incant path for Areki, but I still think it's a good path. I don't know. It still should win. 5-5 is weird to me. Like, it's weird that I didn't win more with him, I think. Because he has Secret Ingredient, which I won a lot with. I can tell you that as a secondary card. We'll get into that. Baron Grail. How sad that one loss. It's such a sad loss, too. I remember it very vividly. It was a Luna secondary with, I started, my artifact was Advanced Growth, the one that gives you 4 attack on your equipments when the units with that equipment die. So I have Baron Grail with Advanced Growth as my starter. And I slammed that Ring 1 trial. I wasn't thinking, I'm like, oh, this is so strong. I have Baron Grail with Advanced Growth. What could go wrong? Take that trial. And then I loaded into the combat, and I went, oh yeah, my unit is Lunar Priestess. That was a very sad run. That was over very quickly. It should easily be a 10-0. I mean, it's very sad ending to that one. But I think Baron Grail's far and away kind of the best. It's hard to evaluate these champions in a vacuum, but Baron Grail's just the best, in my opinion. He's just the best. He's a good starter. It's not as good as Secret Ingredient. He's in Lazarus. I mean, but his starter is good. It's not as good as Secret Ingredient, but it is good. And he's in Lazarus, and he's just a really strong champion with 3 good paths. One of them may be less great. That learning limb is just kind of weird and never really optimal in my opinion. It's doable, but it's one of those ones. It's like, well, there's not really ever any reason to take it when I could just take one of the other 2 awesome ones. But still, just a really great champion. 9-1 doesn't really surprise me. I think he's the best. I think that's reflected here. Then we have the Hellhorn champions. Both of them did pretty bad, which is not surprising to me. Prince kind of stinks. His brawler path is good, but it's very weak early game if you don't have any kind of buffs or rage. Wrathful is just too frail, in my opinion. Just too low HP on Wrathful to be good. I never take it. And then the Reaper is just kind of a one big hit thing that a lot of the time, if I don't see Brawler at my rank 2, then I'm just going to end up throwing Prince away. Hellhorn in general is just a kind of a bad clan. They're really quite bad. I'll get into my full thoughts on the clans, but these champions being in Hellhorn definitely doesn't help them. But I can tell you that Shardtail Queen, even ignoring that she's in Hellhorn, is the worst champion in the game, and the stats do show that. I mean, Shardtail Queen is just terrible. I really wish this was 2-8. My last Shardtail Queen run was really frustrating. One of my most frustrating runs. I had the Red Crown event on my Consumer of Crowns. I was elevatoring him up. The boss, was Entropy Seraph. I played my Consumer of Crowns, and then I played all my Rage Imps in front of him, and I wasn't quite doing enough damage because my Titanite Consumer of Crowns rolled Glass Cannon on the Red Crown, and I died. Really frustrating. That's kind of the thing about that event that I hate. But that's just really any other weapon in the game. It would have been an easy win. But he rolled the Glass Cannon, so I lost. Anyway, that would still suck though, even if it was 2-8, because Shardtail Queen is bad. I think none of her paths are very good. I think the Imparade one is the best, usually the one I prefer, but just not a good champion at all. Can't wait for the buffs to these Monster Train 1 clans. Can't say the same about Sentient though. I do think Sentient is actually quite a good champion now. I think that she's actually pretty good. I don't have the highest thoughts about Awoken, but I do think Sentient is good. I think that Cultivate's good. I think our Explosive Path is way better now. It's still a very competent tank, and it does way more damage. Spikes is not as good, I don't think. Spikes is not really that great. It's kind of at odds with what a lot of Awoken, or not at odds, but just redundant with a lot of what Awoken wants to do. And it's not a whole lot of spikes. It's just some spikes. It's like not anything crazy. It's very low ceiling, and it's if you find like a sweeper or something, then it's just kind of a throwaway a lot of the time. So spikes is not great, but the other 2 paths are quite good. I generally took the Cultivating and Explosive here in most of these runs. Wildington is not good though. Wildington I hate. I've always hated Wildington ever since the Monster Train 1 days. And I should say the same also about Shardtail Queen. I have a little diatribe about Shardtail Queen, Wildington, Soul Guard, and Monster Train 1, but we'll get to that. But Wildington, Wildington, I hate Wildington. I've always hated him. He's always been one of my least favorite champions to play. He's just so fat, so little stats for how fat he is. And his paths have just not kept up. I mean, the quick path is still terrible. It was terrible in Monster Train 1, and they didn't do anything to buff it, so it's still terrible. Strangler path is good. Yeah. He's kind of Strangler or bust. But even the Strangler, a lot of the time, it's just not cutting it. It's just a 3-space sweeper that's has very limited access to scaling in Awoken. can create some awkward situations with overstacking your own floors, and I don't know, it's just not good. And then Thornlord, it's just way too low HP for something that's doing that little offensively and taking up so much room. Tethys 6 and 4, quite good. I think Tethys is good now, actually, unironically. I think not dying to the Divinity Sweep is really awesome. She's really good now. She did get some slight buffs, but I think she's just, I typically like the Frostbite path the best, but the sweep path works too. I mean, it does say sweep, and you can flex into the Frostbite path after that, or even the Conduit one if you want to do that, if you have some kind of incant thing going on. But usually you're not incanting bottom, you're usually incanting top, so I don't know about that, but I think the Conduit one is the one that I really have had no luck with. I think when I only played one and I lost it pretty early, but I think she's good now. I think her Frostbite path, it's funny, especially if you play against the Sap boss on Ring 1. You just have a Train Steward in front of her, Train Steward with Tethys behind. A lot of the time you're just going to win bottom with Tethys. Like, she's just going to kill the boss so fast. Really strong, relentless champion. Soulguard 3 and 7, not a good champion in my opinion. Titan Channel is weird. Takes too many incants. Cold Channel's no HP. Dire Channel is better, but still not doing much. I'm still not loving Dire Channel. I don't know. Don't really love any of his paths. I've had the most luck kind of going like some mix of Titan Channel and Dire Channel. Like Titan Channel 2, Dire Channel 1, or Titan Channel 1, Dire Channel 2. I don't like going Titan Channel 3. It's just too hard to hatch it, which I always thought was the case, by the way. And this is kind of getting into my diatribe I was talking about earlier. Even in the Monster Chain 1 days, I always thought that Prince, Sentient, and Tethys kind of got a bad rap. I always thought that they were better than it seemed like most people thought they were. And then the alternate champions, the Queen, Wildenton, and Soulguard, I always thought these champions were a lot worse than everyone thought they were. I never really liked any of these champions, and I always liked these three. I always thought these three champions were much better than people gave them credit for, but that was my little aside. That just something I was kind of thinking about. I never really liked Soulguard, and I think he's much worse now. And I hate his starter card too. Really bad starter card that you're usually looking to remove as soon as possible. Yeah, I think needs some help again. Umbra champions, Penumbra 6 and 4, Primordium 5 and 5. I think they're both pretty good. I really like Penumbra now, actually. Fun to play with and strong. I just wish that the Gorge Path had a little more starting health, just so you don't get one shot if you don't draw a morsel to chump block, if you're playing him like top. But otherwise a good champion. I didn't really mess around with Architect very much, but both the Trample and the Gorge were quite good in my opinion. Primordium went 5 and 5. I think Primordium is one of those ones that's like, yes, the ceiling is very high if you get superfood and you get good buffs and equipment for superfood, but there's plenty of runs where I felt like I didn't get offered superfood, or I didn't get any good buffs or weapons. And Primordium was just like not really doing anything for me. I also feel like I got a good amount of Primordium with like Under Legion, where there's just no synergy there. So yeah, I think 5 and 5 is probably worse than you'd expect for Primordium. I don't know. It probably is worse than it should be. But I'm not super... From a consistency standpoint, run to run, I don't think Primordium is like super powerful. Because there's just too much variance in what you can see. Obviously, Primordium can go absolutely insane. And I had a few runs with Superfood and all this crazy Ember Drain stuff and crazy equipments, and my alloyed construct is 27 multi-strike and just one-shotting the game, and it's like, yeah, well, obviously that can happen on Primordium, but that doesn't happen a lot of the time. I don't know, just my thought. But in any case, I really like the Umber champions. I think they're both quite good in any event. I think 5 and 5 is still probably too low for Primordium, but I think they're both quite good. As for melting, neither of these champions did very well. I don't know. I still feel like I'm trying to get my sea legs under me when it comes to melting in this game. Like, I feel like I have to learn them all over again. They were the hardest champion to kind of get a handle on for me in Monster Train 1. I feel like in Monster Train 2 I am almost kind of trying to find my way through the dark again with them, where I kind of have to relearn what's good. I have to like relearn how much burnout I need before I can like confidently play burnout cards on my units. I need to know how much reform I need. I need to really get a feel for these kind of things. I have to like relearn and recalibrate my melting brain. Rector Flicker, I feel like I got him a lot with Luna. I kind of like Rector Flicker. I think he's pretty good. I do think that the Harvest Path is a little bit weak early on. It really needs to be buffed, I think. But Dark Calling is still very good. Dark Calling is really good. As it always was. It was always the best. And then his Burnout Path is just a nothing. I pretty much never take the Burnout Path. I never really see a way I can justify it. I think you need to start with Burnout and Reform to really be able to justify it. And that just doesn't really ever happen. There needs to be some payoff for the Burnout Rector. I don't know, that's kind of a tangent, but anyway, Little Fade. Yeah, Little Fade is... I hate Little Fade. You know what? I don't hate Little Fade. I hate Primitive Mold. I hate Primitive Mold. The number of runs that I lost, that was just like... Okay, I'm just like kind of elevatoring my units. I'm reforming them on the second floor. Okay, they die. The boss goes up to the third floor. I'm reforming them. Oh, wait, no, I'm not reforming them because I didn't draw any Primitive Molds. I just need to draw one. This is reform something. And I don't die here, but I die because I didn't draw anything. Pretty annoying. I don't know. I don't like Little Fade. Her Spike's Path is obviously bugged, but even without the bug, I think it's bad. And then Firelight, very risky if you don't have Burnout Extension. Really reliant on drawing Primitive Molds in the right order. It's really... one of the worst feelings in the world is when you play Firelight Little Fade on Ring 1, and then your opening hand is like 4 Primitive Molds, and you're like, well, these are useless to me now, and I'm not going to draw any more Primitive Molds for like the rest of this combat. So I guess I just lose. Yeah, that's the thing I've always kind of hated about Little Fade. And now that the Ring 1 is like so much more treacherous, like you actually will die because of that a lot of the time. So yeah, I'm not crazy about Little Fade at all. The ceiling is obviously still there with Firelight. And the Quick Endless Path is always just solid. I think I'm always confident taking the Quick Endless Path. If it's shown to me, I'm always confident-ish taking it. But even the Quick Endless Path to me just doesn't really get there a lot. It doesn't scale as well. It's good in the early game, but to me it kind of falls off more than it used to. But yeah. Okay, so that was all my thoughts on the champions. What do I have next? We have starter cards. So this is the starter cards when I got them secondary. So going through Just Cause 6-7, Inspire 2-3, Firestarter 7-8, Little Whelp 3-4, Witchweave 4-7, Moon Ritual 5-6, Eager Conscript 5-3, Sport Touch 3-10, Secret Ingredient 14-2, Erratic Assistant 7-2, Torch 3-6, Queen's Implink 5-4, Restore 6-4, Root Seeds 7-1, Frozen Lance 4-4, Foregone Power 1-3, Shade Splitter 5-4, Plink 3-7, Drag 5-8, Primitive Mold 7-5. Okay, let's go through this. Both of the banished ones didn't do that great, which is kind of surprising for Just Cause, because I do think Just Cause is like pretty good, but I guess if you're not doing like banished stuff, it's not really doing anything for you. And then Inspire just kind of sucks in general, in my opinion. Just a bad card. Even when you have Talos, this is a bad card. One of the worst starters in the game. But Just Cause is good with Fel, but I guess it makes sense that we don't have Fel, and you're not really doing banish shifting stuff. It's like, it's not really doing a whole lot for you. Then we have Firestarter. Didn't do very well, surprisingly. I do think Firestarter is a good card. Bloated Whelp, same thing. I don't think Bloated Whelp is a great starter card, though. It's kind of low impact and weak, even in the early game. So that makes more sense to me. But Firestarter, I feel like should have performed better. But Witchweave, Moon Ritual, no surprise that neither of them did very well. I think that Luna Covens are a clan that really wants to have the champions, and even the champions aren't very good. So yeah, their starter cards often just do nothing when you don't have their champions. They're very low impact. They're doing nothing in the early game for you, so there's no surprise there. Eager Conscript, again, no surprise with Eager Conscript. You can make a big mushroom stack in the early game. It'll at least guarantee your early game. Sport Touch did terrible for me, though. I've grown to hate Sport Touch. I don't know why. I just always lose with it. I just feel like it doesn't do anything later in the game. It's just such a low impact card. It's one of those cards I'm really excited to remove now as the run goes on. It's one of my high priority removal targets once I get all my stewards and stuff out. I think it's a really weak low impact card. It's good in the early game. It's like a fine ping, but it's also a delayed ping. So like your units still take damage from the backliners before they die to Sport Touch. And then it's like the fact that you can stack a little bit of decay on enemies with it is, in my opinion, just not very valuable. It's just a very low decay number, and it's just a bad ping. It's a delayed ping. I really don't like Sport Touch. I really sheds some light on how good Madame Lion's Mane is, that she kind of hides how bad this card is, in my opinion. Secret Ingredient, this is what I was getting at earlier, and 14-2. This game gave me a lot of Secret Ingredient. I got a lot of Secret Ingredient secondary, and I went 14-2. Very strong card, which is why it's so baffling that Areki went 5-5. Because it's like, well, I have Secret Ingredient, so how am I losing so much more with Areki specifically? So that's weird. And then Erratic Assistant, yeah, another good starter card, and also in Lazarus. You'll see Lazarus. You'll see why I'm saying that about Lazarus. Torch, not very good. No surprise, not a great card. Queen's Impling did pretty well, though. Kind of surprising. I don't think it's very good, but, variants and everything. Restore also did pretty well, as did Root Seeds. Root Seeds did really well, which surprised me, because I think that Root Seeds, on paper, is not a very good card anymore. But maybe it is? I don't know. It seems like spending 1 Ember to draw 1 card next turn and give your unit 2 attack is just like pretty low impact, but I don't know. I guess it's sort of like a cycle. Maybe just being a cycle is strong enough for 1 Ember? I don't know. I kind of skipped over Restore. Restore is just good. It's just a good, solid early game card. Great for just keeping you alive. It really helps get you through the early game, so it makes sense. Frozen Lands 4-4. Yeah, not a great card, but Foregone Power, like I talked about earlier, pretty low sample size. Only 4 runs with Foregone Power, but pretty poor performance as expected. It's a terrible card. Shade Splitter, pretty good. Morsels are good. Actually, I feel like this number should be higher. I feel like even 5-4 is kind of low. I guess it kind of makes sense though, because when you're Umbra secondary, that just never feels good. You really want their champions as Umbra. Typically, when you're not Umbra primary, you're not really wanting to do a whole lot of Umbra things. So, I think that Shade Splitter at 5-4 is merely just because we're in Umbra secondary. And then Plink, yeah, we all know the story with Plink. We all love Plink. It's bad. No surprise there. Dreg didn't do well. We love Dreg, same thing. We've never been a fan of Dreg in this house. When you don't have Rector, this is just barely doing anything. It's just a kind of a bad unit that dies and doesn't really help you. Primitive Mold, I kind of talked badly about it earlier, but it did pretty well. Primitive Mold did pretty well. I don't know. Mostly because, and I think that the reason why Primitive Mold did well is because it means that I was playing Melting and I didn't have Little Fade. You know what I mean? Like, Melting is still good. It's just that having little fade, having to rely on these reforms in the early game is bad, but having them available at all, I mean, when you're able to do something else, is usually a good thing, if that makes any sense. So that was all the secondary cards. I think next up we just have overall clan win rate. So this is champions, both champions combined with both starter cards secondary, all runs that involved these clans. So every single clan, no, I guess that's not true, right? So yeah, there's a different sample size for each because secondary clan was always random, but so for Banished, 55% win rate, Pyreborn exactly 50%, Lunacoven 43, Underlegion 56, Lazarus League 78, Hellhorned 32, Awoken 58, Stygian Guard 44, Umbra 49, and Melting 42. So, a few things jump out here. You know, I think it's pretty clear looking at this that you can tell that on average, the Monster Train 2 clans are performing better than the Monster Train 1 clans. I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone. There is a certain aspect to that, though, that we'll get into later as the big revelation that reveals itself in the next set of data. But yeah, the Monster Train 2 clans overall obviously performed better. Let's see. So the overall Lazarus League, 78% win rate. Nothing else is even at 60, and we're almost at 80 on Lazarus League. That is just so ridiculous. I think Lazarus League is just so clearly far and away the best clan in the game. Like, it's not even close, and this data shows it. It's just not even close. The next closest, according to the data, is actually Awoken, which is crazy to me, because if you asked me before this exercise, I would have told you that I think Awoken's the worst clan in the game. I cannot in good faith say that anymore. I actually can't. Yeah, and then next one, Underlegion, and then closely followed by Banished. Then we have Pyreborn. So let me write this out. So our order is what? Laz, Awoken, Underlegion, Banished, Pyreborn. After that, what is Umbra? And then Stygian, Luna, Melting, and Hellhorned. So, Laz, we talked about Awoken. Can't say that can't say in good faith that they're the worst clan in the game. I just don't think that it's possible in this. I think there's enough of a sample size for me to say, okay, I think I have to reevaluate how I feel about Awoken. Because on paper, they're still terrible to me. But, I don't know. Underlegion, like I said, I feel a lot better about Underlegion than I used to. Banished I've always thought was good, and I think that Banished should be higher, honestly. Pyreborn's good, Umbra's good, Stygian, Luna, Melting, Hellhorned. Melting is too low in my opinion. Like I said, my melting brain is just not there yet. I don't have like the feel for it yet, I feel like. If I were to quickly go over what I feel about the actual clan power level, let me just like quickly write here, Banished. I'll probably say Underlegion after that. And then I'm going to say Pyreborn. Then probably Umbra. And then I think tough call, actually. I'm going to say Stygian and then Umbra. Well, Stygian does have Soul Guard. Let's leave it. I think that any of these three are like interchangeable. And then I have to put Awoken after that because I can't in good faith say that they're that bad. And then I'd say Luna and then Hellhorned. Hellhorned being at the bottom and Laz being at the top, in my opinion, is correct in terms of win rate. This is how I would actually rank the clans. This is how they're ranked in my data. So as you can see, Banished I think should be a little higher. Stygian should be higher. Maybe. I think Melting should be higher, and Awoken should be lower. I don't know, maybe I overperformed. Maybe they're just so much better than I'm giving them credit for. I don't know. But that's how I feel. In any case, it's pretty clear to me, other than Luna, that Monster Train 2 clans are significantly better than Monster Train 1 clans. And here's the big reveal. Here is my Monster Train 2. So what this is, so going row by row here, I have my Monster Train 2 combo. Basically a Monster Train 2 champion with a Monster Train 2 random starter card. Monster Train 2 champion with Monster Train 1 starter card. Monster Train 1 champion with Monster Train 2 starter card. And Monster Train 1 champion with a Monster Train 1 starter. For each different champion type, Monster Train 2 champions should obviously add up to 100, and same with this. So there is a little bit of fluctuation based on how often I got the starter cards for 2 and 1, but in the secondary clan. But here's what we're looking at. My win rate with Monster Train 2, 65. Monster Train 2 champion, Monster Train 1 card, 59. Monster Train 1 champion, Monster Train 2 starter card, 42. Monster Train 1 champion, Monster Train 1 starter card, 37. What I'm seeing here is about a 6% difference in win rate when I have a Monster Train 2 secondary card versus a Monster Train 1 secondary card with a Monster Train 2 champion. What I'm seeing here is about, 42, but about a 5% win rate difference when I have a Monster Train 2 secondary card versus a Monster Train 1 secondary card with Monster Train 1 champions. So again, the difference was about 6%, and now here the difference is about 5%, so about the same. What's really shocking is that the difference between having a Monster Train 2 champion and a Monster Train 1 champion is like 23-22% win rate. If I were to have one takeaway from this entire exercise, it would be this. I would have probably just told you beforehand that I think that Monster Train 1 clans are just worse than Monster Train 2 clans. Well, their cards are worse, their units are worse, their artifacts are worse. You know, everything is just worse across the board. And that shouldn't be shocking to anyone. I think pretty much everyone thinks that way. What really jumps out and jumps off the page here in this data to me is that it seems that Monster Train 1 stuff in general isn't really that much worse. Well, it could mean two things, right? It could mean that Monster Train 1 stuff isn't that much worse than Monster Train 2 stuff. Non-champion is what I'm talking about when I talk about stuff. It's about 5-6% difference in win rate if I have Monster Train 1 versus Monster Train 2 secondary. That is, the entire pool of cards is diluted half with Monster Train 1 stuff, only makes my win rate about 5-6% worse. Whereas having a Monster Train 1 champion makes it over 20% worse. Even if I have a Monster Train 2 secondary card, having the Monster Train 2 stuff available to me is still bad if I have a Monster Train 1 champion. So it could mean one of two things. It can mean either that Monster Train 1 champions are way worse than Monster Train 2 champions, or it can mean that Monster Train 1 champions are worse, but the reason why it's such a huge difference in win rate is because your champion matters so much. I don't know which of those two realities it is, but I think it is the case that the easiest way that you could go about buffing the Monster Train 1 champions appears to me, Monster Train 1 clans appears to me that you would want to buff the champions. I think that's the simplest and easiest way that will have the most notable difference, is that buffing these champions is what's going to make the biggest impact on the win rate. I was really surprised when I saw this, and maybe this is obvious to you. Maybe you're like, oh yeah, duh, I knew that. But it's like, I knew that Monster Train 2 clans were obviously better than Monster Train 1 clans too, but I just assumed it was everything across the board. Whereas here, it appears to me that it's Monster Train 2 champions versus Monster Train 1 champions that is really the difference. Even just having an equal number of Monster Train 2 and Monster Train 1 stuff, there is about a 20% almost difference in win rate. Just if you have the Monster Train 2 champion versus the Monster Train 1 champion. There's a huge difference, and I think that this is a sufficient sample size. It's not a huge sample size, but it's a big enough sample size and a big enough gulf in win rate that it has to be meaningful. It has to mean something. I think that's just really interesting and something that really jumped off the page for me. So that's it. So that's all my data here. I hope you enjoyed listening to all of this and going over all this. I love this kind of stuff, like I said. Half of the reason why I did this was just so that I could get a clear picture of what's doing well for me. Because it's not fun to take my data when I'm allowing myself to restart combats and undo turns so that I can get my win rates up to 90-95%, and that's not very interesting. It's not shedding light on anything. That's not very interesting. So on the one hand, I did this little experiment for the sake of the data, and I also did it to hopefully try to improve, and just out of curiosity too, just to see what I could do with a no reset little sprint here. I think one day my ultimate goal might be to try to do a full rotation of champions. 20 champions, no resets, win streak. 20 win streak, full rotating, the full gamut. We are going to get some Monster Train 1 buffs. I know that for a fact. I think that's going to be the next update. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be much more doable when that happens. I'd love to try it as my ultimate goal in this game. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do another little sprint, I think, of 100 runs, just allowing myself to reset. I'm just going to try to go for the biggest streak I can, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully by the time I'm done that, they'll have the update out. I'd like to see what they update. I'd like to see how it goes. Because I think, once that happens, a lot of this data will kind of be moot, but it's interesting to explore this sort of thing. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I would like to do more of this sort of content. I also want to do more tier lists, more meta content, more rankings and stuff, more just talking about the game. I just like talking about the game. I was kind of thinking too about I was kind of talking about earlier with the champions, just doing what I would buff. But maybe that video would get outdated pretty quickly. So I don't know. I definitely think I want to do a champion path tier list. All three individual champion paths for each champion. So that'll be 60 things. So that'll be fun. I want to do more stuff like this. So, hope you guys enjoyed watching it. And that will be all. Thank you.